The woman who lied to God. The story of Ananias and Sapphira. Listen, this story turns fast, where holiness meets deceit. In the early church, awe filled every room. Have you ever told a lie so small you thought no one would notice? A tiny white lie, a slight exaggeration, a detail conveniently left out. We've all been there, navigating the small compromises we believe are harmless, invisible. But what if that lie wasn't to a person, but to God Himself? What if the stage for that deception wasn't a quiet corner, but the very heart of a community ablaze with divine power? Today's story, found in the book of Acts, is one of the most shocking and sobering moments in the early church, a story where radical generosity turned into calculated greed and a private deceit met a terrifyingly public divine judgment. This is the haunting story of Ananias and Sapphira, the couple who tried to cheat God and paid the ultimate price. It's a chilling reminder that in the presence of a holy God, some lines can never be crossed. To understand the gravity of their sin, we must first understand the world they lived in. It was a time of miracles. The Holy Spirit had descended upon the believers in Jerusalem like a rushing wind and tongues of fire. The apostles preached with a power that was not their own, and thousands were being saved daily, their lives transformed in an instant. The air itself felt charged with the presence of God. In this atmosphere of revival, a radical new community was born. Believers sold their possessions, fields, houses, valuables, and laid the money at the apostles' feet. This wasn't a rule or a command. It was a spontaneous overflow of love. They were compelled by a unity so profound that the concept of mine and yours began to dissolve. The result was a community where no one lacked anything. The rich cared for the poor, not out of duty, but out of genuine family affection. The Spirit of God moved freely among them, binding their hearts together. It was a church on fire, a beautiful, brilliant flame of purity and love. But where there is fire, there are always shadows waiting to creep in. And in the heart of this vibrant community, a dark seed was about to be planted. Among the believers were a husband and wife, Ananias and Sapphira. They were part of this movement, witnesses to the daily miracles and the overwhelming generosity. They saw others giving generously, earning respect and honor within the community. They saw men like Barnabas, who sold a field he owned and gave every last coin to the apostles, holding nothing back. The community celebrated his sacrifice, not for the amount, but for the purity of his heart. And as they watched, a toxic mix of envy and ambition began to stir. Jealousy whispered in their hearts. They wanted that same admiration. They craved the reputation of being selfless and devout. They wanted the praise, but not the same sacrifice. They wanted the glory of giving all, while secretly keeping a safety net for themselves. So, in the privacy of their home, away from the light of the community, they hatched a plan. It was a simple plan, rooted in a complex deception. Ananias went and sold a piece of property they owned. The transaction was legitimate, the money real. That night, they likely spread the silver coins across their table, the full price gleaming in the lamplight. They counted the money together. And then, with mutual agreement, they hid a portion for themselves.
"Who will ever know?" Sapphira likely said, her voice a confident whisper. "No one saw the sale, no one knows the price."
"It's still a large offering," Ananias would have reasoned, justifying the lie. "More than most can give. We'll tell them it's the full price."
Their sin wasn't in keeping some of the money. The property was theirs, and the decision to give was voluntary. Their sin was the lie. They conspired to perform a public act of devotion while harboring a secret deceit, and in that moment a lie was born not to man, but to the Spirit of God who dwelt among them. The next morning, Ananias, with the pouch of silver heavy in his hand, walked into the gathering of believers. He carried himself with an air of pious gravity, ready to play his part. The apostles were there, likely teaching or praying. The people watched in reverent silence, the air thick with holy expectation. This was sacred ground. He approached the front and laid the money at Peter's feet, a public display of sacrifice. He was pretending to be humble, pretending to give all, just as Barnabas had done. He waited for the look of approval, the murmur of admiration from the crowd. But before a word of praise could be spoken, the atmosphere shifted. The warmth in the room turned icy. The Holy Spirit, the Spirit of truth, would not be mocked. Peter, filled with a divine and terrible knowledge, felt the deception like a physical blow. The Spirit of truth exposed what was hidden in the darkness. Peter looked straight at him, his gaze cutting through the pious facade.
Ananias, he said, his voice resonating with a sorrowful authority, why has Satan filled your heart to lie to the Holy Spirit and keep back for yourself part of the price of the land?
The room fell deathly silent. Every eye was fixed on Ananias, whose face was draining of color. The lie was out. The darkness was exposed to the light. Peter's voice trembled, not with anger, but with the grief of a shepherd seeing a wolf among his flock. He continued, clarifying the depth of the betrayal. While it remained unsold, did it not remain your own? And after it was sold, was it not at your disposal?
You have not lied to men but to God.
At these words, the full weight of his sin crashed down upon Ananias. He had not merely tried to fool the apostles, he had tested the Spirit of the living God. His face turned pale. His breath caught in his throat. The strength left his limbs. And right there, in the holy presence of the apostles and the congregation, he fell to the floor, dead. A wave of terror and awe swept through everyone who heard what happened. This was not the work of man. This was a swift, terrifying judgment of God against hypocrisy in his own house. In the stunned silence, some young men came forward, wrapped his body in a linen shroud, and carried him out to be buried immediately. There was no ceremony, only a grim, silent procession. About 3 hours passed. The shock in the room had settled into a heavy, somber silence. It was then that Sapphira arrived, completely unaware of what had happened to her husband. She walked in gracefully, perhaps looking around for her husband, expecting to be met with smiles and admiration for their great sacrifice. She was ready to receive the praise they had conspired to steal. Peter looked at her, his expression a mixture of profound sadness and gentle resolve. God, in his mercy, was giving her one last chance to tell the truth.
Tell me, Sapphira, he asked, his voice quiet but clear, pointing to the money. Is this the price you and Ananias got for the land?
She hesitated for just a moment. This was her crossroads. She could confess, or she could double down on the lie. Her eyes darted toward the coins, then back to Peter's searching gaze. She saw no sign of her husband, only a room full of solemn faces. Unfazed, she chose to seal her fate.
Yes, she said, her voice steady. That's the full amount.
The lie was spoken. The final line was crossed. Peter's heart broke, knowing what was to come.
How is it, he said, his voice now filled with a divine and chilling finality, that you have agreed together to test the Spirit of the Lord? Listen, the feet of the men who buried your husband are at the door, and they will carry you out also.
And instantly at that very moment she fell to the ground at his feet, dead. Just as Peter had said, the young men entered, found her lifeless body, and carried her out to be buried beside her husband. The conspiracy they planned in secret ended in a shared public grave. A great and holy fear fell upon the entire church. This was not the fear of a tyrant, but the awe-filled reverence for a God who is utterly holy and sees all things. Everyone who heard about it, both inside and outside the church, trembled. The message was brutally clear. This was not a story of greed alone, it was a warning about the poison of hypocrisy. It was a lesson burned into the foundation of the church. You can deceive your friends, your family, and your community, but you can never deceive God. He sees the heart. He weighs the hidden motive, the quiet compromise, the desire for praise that outweighs the desire for purity. Ananias and Sapphira wanted the appearance of holiness without the cost of obedience. They wanted to wear the mask of righteousness, but in God's immediate presence, masks cannot survive. They are burned away by the light of His truth. So what does this severe story mean for us today? Ananias and Sapphira remind us of one eternal truth. God doesn't demand our perfection. He knows we are flawed. But He desires, He requires truth in the inward parts. You don't have to be flawless, but you must be honest before Him. He already knows the truth. He's just waiting for you to acknowledge it. Because when we walk in truth, confessing our shortcomings, His grace covers us completely. But when we choose to live in deception, we willingly step outside of His protection and fellowship. So let this story echo in your spirit, not as a source of fear, but as a call to integrity. Never trade honesty with God for the fleeting approval of people. Live with an undivided heart, because the eyes of the Lord see deeper than our words, deeper than our actions. They see the heart. This is a story of Ananias and Sapphira, the couple who lied to God and discovered that in His presence, truth is not a suggestion. It is the very air you breathe.
Today is another week to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tap on the subscribe button to be updated with biblical stories that will uplift your faith. Yeah, this is a holistic channel. Morocco is all about biblical stories that will help your life. So that is it about Ananias and Sapphira. Let's ask you this question. If we were to tell your story, what kind of story we will tell about you? Thank you for watching and see you in our next video. Bye.